Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm the second newest member to Congress, and I don't know if some of my fellow congressmen are more used to these budget overruns or not, but when I read this, I was just thought it was outrageous. That it's 19 times over the budget that was estimated, and so far behind, delayed. And I really think this is just a perfect example of why the American public doesn't trust the federal government in spending its tax dollars. I really do. I just thought it was outrageous. So I guess my question, since I'm new, is what has been done since, 2007? This was expected to be finished. Has Congress or NASA done anything in between besides what's just happening now with this IRB? If they did do something, obviously it didn't work. And so I want to know if anything has been done in the past 11 years, and if so, why should we believe it's going to change in the future?
So in 2011, there was an independent review board, and at the time, all of this was still in development. Going back even further, one of the big challenges we had is changing requirements, changing specifications. What do we want the telescope to do? How far do we want to see? And if you go from I mentioned this earlier, if you go from a 4-meter telescope to a 6.5-meter telescope, when I say telescope, I'm talking about the size of the mirror that actually reflects onto another mirror and then the sensors. When you change something that is this precise, this much, it really has an impact on cost and schedule. In 2011, we had an independent review. We set a new baseline. And that new baseline actually had us launching in 2019. And we got all the way to the 5-yard line. And when we integrated the spacecraft element with the optical telescope element and did testing, we made all kinds of discoveries that were unfortunate, and not just unfortunate, problematic. And that's where we are today. So what we have to do now is, as Mr. Young has noted, we're going back and we're going to make sure, because the way this telescope is going to be launched, it's going to be 1 million miles away from Earth. We don't have any human spacecraft capability that can get up there to service it, and if we could, this telescope is too delicate to even service. That being said, we have to get it right the first time. So that's why we go through such extensive testing. Some of the testing, ultimately, we discovered things that are routine, which is why you test. Some of the testing demonstrated that we, in fact, have some embedded errors and some human errors, embedded problems and human errors, some embedded problems going back a number of years. Mr. Young mentioned that the thrusters were washed with the wrong solvent, and that corroded some seals. That was done years ago, and we only discovered in testing that that had happened. Again, this is why we test. We want to make these mistakes here on Earth, because that mistake, if it was in space, it would be too late. It can't be fixed. So some of it is routine testing that ultimately we're making discoveries that we need to make discoveries on, and others we're finding errors that occurred years ago. And some of those errors include using the wrong solvent to wash the thrusters, which is why we're going through right now, and we are starting from a baseline and saying, if we have to find every embedded error, that we have to go back to the very beginning of every component on the spacecraft and make sure we haven't made any errors, which is what we're doing, because there's no room for failure once it's in space. And that's what we're doing. Mission success is the primary objective. I believe that we're there, and here we are requesting an extra $800 million and a few more years, and I think we can get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I appreciate that we're under a new administration and that you're new, and so you have to take what was given you. I just, again, want to express my frustration that we're talking about taxpayer dollars, and it's very frustrating to me and other taxpayers that this is so much of a cost overrun, and although I've heard testimony how important it is, I understand that, very frustrating. I think we need to do a better job of making sure that we're not so far off the mark. Thank you, and I yield back my time.